I fell in love with my psychiatrist, and he knew, and he kept me. Tell him about how much I loved him and
Wait a minute. Wait, how much you loved him? Wait. Now I need to hear from the psychiatrist. The more that she talks, the more I'm like, maybe she got something going here. Now she making me feel like I need to see a psychiatrist. Hello, little enzymes, and welcome back to Dacia's Digest. Today, we will be covering the story of the woman who fell in love with her psychiatrist and then proceeded to create a multi-part story time on TikTok explaining everything. She ends up being in like AI psychosis, naming her AI, going live. It's like a big thing, and I haven't actually gotten through all of her videos or really gotten through the nitty-gritty of the full story. So I'm kind of going to be watching it for the first time as I'm watching it with you guys. I was going to use a creator who I saw had summed up the entire story, but it seemed that the length of that summation was going to be about the same length as me just watching the videos for myself. And plus, I feel like we'll get the real gist of what's going on watching it directly from her. So this might be a little bit of a longer video. I'll cut out any parts if I feel like they're unnecessary or repetitive. But with that being said, I put the young lady's TikTok handle in the description. You can go on her page and see all of the different parts. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Let's get into it, child. So this is the young lady. As I said, she did a multi-part series on TikTok. So she's actually a TikToker. From what I see on her page, she does like ADHD content tips and stuff like that. Her name is Kendra. Apparently she was seeing a psychiatrist being treated for, I'm not exactly sure yet. Maybe we will get into it, but this was the first video that popped everything off.
I fell in love with my psychiatrist, and he knew, and he kept me until I had the strength to leave after 4 years. Here it is, part 1. So I decided to go back on ADHD meds after many years of being off of them. I was on them in my early 20s to help me get through college, and then I went off of them because they just weren't, like, the side effects were too much over the benefits. But then in my late 20s, I read this book, Taking Charge of Adult ADHD, and it absolutely changed my life. The biggest thing that I took away was that it's very important for ADHDers to be on meds. So I decided to make an appointment with a psychiatrist. I just Googled psychiatry in the city that I lived in, and I went with the first one that came up, and I got an appointment within a month. And then I booked a 90-minute intake, and I show up to the intake, and this man is my age, and I can't help but notice that he's pretty attractive, this psychiatrist.
So that's the first video. And I will say, so like I said, I have not gone through all of her videos and seen everything that she's claiming here, because she starts to make some claims that he was also in love with her, but he didn't fire her because I don't know, it gets, So right now, although everything that I've seen online is pointing to the fact that no, she's delusional, he wasn't really in love with her. I'm trying to go into it with an open mind, and I'm just trying to hear what she's saying and see what I can deduce. So far, I mean, she hasn't said anything crazy. She's, made an appointment. She thinks that he's attractive. She needs to be on ADHD meds. Like I said, she does ADHD content. So let's go to the second part.
So in this intake, I kind of clocked that he was attractive in my age, but when I tell you that I've had a lot of couch time in my life, a lot of therapy, I just went right into it. I trusted him enough, of course, why wouldn't I, to tell him about my childhood trauma, my daddy issues, if you will, what I had went through, all of the relationship trauma that I had. I was 6 months sober at this time, but like all of the drinking and substance use I used to do, and he just listened and nodded, and
she been through a lot. Dang. 6 months old. Okay.
That's the thing about psychiatrists, is that they're good at pretending to listen. They can appear connected, but that doesn't mean that they're always connected. So I just felt really seen. And I also told him, I was like, look, I don't want to be on stimulant meds. So he listened to me and he put me on the non-stimulant ADHD med at the lowest dose just to figure out if it was going to work for me.
I think an important distinction to also throw in here, in case you don't know, a psychiatrist is a medical doctor and they work with mental health patients, and their primary function is the medication of, mental health issues. So you might go to a psychologist who is a doctor but not a medical doctor for talk therapy, EMDR, whatever other things, like for the actual like counseling and sitting on the couch, as she says, therapy. And then the psychologist might refer you to a psychiatrist to get the actual medication and whatnot. Psychiatrists don't do that much talk therapy. They could, but they don't necessarily specialize in that. So just FYI, I used to want to be a psychiatrist, but I also wanted to be a psychologist. And then it was just you can do both. You can be like a PsyD and also a MD. It's just a lot of school, and I might as well just start a Reddit channel, but basically the same thing. I'm just kidding. Okay, so that was part 2. Part 3.
So I hadn't ever seen a psychiatrist before. When I was on meds in my early 20s, I only got meds from my primary care physician. So I didn't understand how psychiatry works. So because he was figuring out my med dose, I saw him every month, and he just made me feel like I was his friend. He was really, really funny and cracked jokes and told me he was impressed with my running that I would do. And yeah, so of course I loved the attention.
I mean, does she want him to be mean? Like, I don't know, like if he's the care provider, shouldn't he have a good, positive relationship with the patient? I feel like if I was going to the doctor, and I have had a doctor who was just like cold every time I go there. She doesn't like make small talk, or she doesn't like seem to take my concerns seriously, XYZ. I probably wouldn't continue to see them. But, the providers I have now, every time I see them, they're friendly, so like, so far I don't really see anything that he really did wrong. Like, you want him to be mean to you?
And it was in my 3rd session with him, because at this point we were all on Zoom, that I asked him, I said,
wait a minute, 3rd session? So, because she only sees him monthly, presumably once a month. So this is her 3rd time ever seeing him in life in the span of 3 months. So I don't know what she finna say, but...
Hey, do you mind if I call you by your first name?
Oh.
And he's Pakistani, so I said his first name wrong. And he said, well, it's pronounced this, but yes, of course you can. And he seemed so smug and happy with himself. And I know that is because that was his first sign that him pretending like we're friends was working. And to be fair to me, I had only ever been to therapy before. I didn't realize that, it's important to call your doctor last name. I mean, I did know that. I did it with all my other doctors, but it just showed that the boundaries were blurring, and he liked that.
Okay, pause. So I will say, to me, it is a bit odd that he was okay with her calling him by his first name. Because I worked in healthcare for like a year, like a long time when I was younger. And typically, doctors are pretty, not strict, but like, it's almost like a respect thing. Like, if I go to school for 12 plus years to be called a doctor, I want to be called a doctor, If I'm paying hundreds of thousands of dollars to be called a doctor, I want to make sure that you call me a doctor. So him being okay with her calling him by his first name, that is a little bit of like an orange flag. I mean, some doctors are cool with it. Some doctors, they just don't care. But if it were me, just to make sure I keep it professional, I probably would not have made that choice if I was him. Let me see what else she says.
So from then on, from my 3rd session on, I started calling him his first name. And then he just started turning up the volume on us being friendly. And he would ask me, for the first 6 sessions, he asked me, after the meds, he said, how's your bowels, bladder, and appetite? And I would say they're all normal. And then he would ask me any thoughts of harm. And apparently that's pretty common for psychiatry to ask those questions. And then on our 6th session, when things were really, the chemistry was starting to be there before, I didn't realize it. I was like, oh, this man is just friendly. And he said, I have to ask this because it's a special interest of mine, but is there any thoughts of harm? I was special to him. And I said, no thoughts of harm. And he didn't ever ask me a clinical question again. He stopped asking me about my bladder, bowels, and appetite, and he stopped asking me about thoughts of harm. So to me, I would just show up and he was like a therapy appointment every month.
I mean, I feel like she's reading into that a lot. She's reading into that a lot. There could be reasons that he would have asked that, especially if he's doing medical research or something, or if the particular medication that she's on, he's just trying to keep track of how it's affecting patients, etc. Doctors do that a lot, surveying their patients, basically. So, and plus the switch up that. I'm just saying there could be a variety of reasons why he asks certain questions and doesn't ask certain questions. There could be a change in, medical guidelines of how you're supposed to care for, specific, it's just so many different things for her to be like, oh no, it's because he thought I was special. That's a huge leap. That's a huge stretch. Maybe there was something else that happened that solidified that belief, but I'm not with her on that one. I feel like that was a huge stretch.
So I was seeing him every month and just gaining more and more respect for him because he would just tell me these little things about his successes and all of the cool things that he was doing in his life. And it made me fall for him, honestly. And he was really good at listening. And I mean, he's a Pisces, right? So of course he's going to be there.
Now, girl.
And be able to go deep with my feelings. But that doesn't...
Okay, I love the Zodiacs as much as any other person, but let's not... Why did I pause it with her face looking like that? Let's remember that this man is a medical doctor and is here to listen so that he can properly give you the medication that you need. So it's kind of his job to be a good listener. I don't think him being a Pisces, maybe it does, I don't know, but and how she know he a Pisces? Did she look up his birthday? I wonder if she mentions that.
Doesn't mean that he wasn't extracting from them. Anyway, so I would beg him to let me see him every week. Beg him, because my therapist at the time, he was fine. He wasn't a predator, but he was fine. He just wasn't doing very much for me. And so that therapist retired and I got a new therapist. And this new therapist, who is a 75-year-old woman with a PhD, she was pretty helpful. So I stopped asking my psychiatrist, begging.
Okay, so enter the third character in the story. And I have heard about this therapist just from all of the different summaries that I've heard about this story. Apparently, this new therapist becomes a bit problematic in this story and starts almost supporting this young lady's delusions. Like I said, I haven't watched this, but we'll just keep in mind this new therapist, child.
So I stopped asking my psychiatrist, begging, honestly, to be my therapist and let me see him more, right? Which also should have been a red flag. But
Wait, red flag to who? To him or to you? I guess she's saying it should have been a red flag to him as a medical provider if she's asking to see him 4 times a month instead of just their once a month thing. I guess she's saying he should have dropped me out as a patient at that point because it should have been a red flag to him that I want to see him so much. I don't know, girl. The delusion is seeming like it's at an all-time high.
Focusing on this therapist. However, I would tell the therapist how obsessed I was with my psychiatrist, and she didn't do anything about it. She just was interested. She also loved stories about my dating life, and yeah, she also was getting supply from me in her own way, but that's for another part. So yes, so I got a new therapist who actually helped me. She taught me CBT, EFT, all of these different modalities. And so I went back to just being okay with seeing her once a month while
not she said his name. Dang, not she done doxed the psychiatrist. Dang, because it's not hard. Like, it's the internet. It's not going to be hard to figure out who this man is. You got his first name. You know that he's a Pisces. So you know what time of year that he was born. Wherever she lives, you can probably easily figure that out by looking at her page. So she done doxed the psychiatrist.
While he was giving me these little breadcrumbs of making me feel special, telling me about his professional achievements, telling me about how he's getting international recognition. And it worked. I was really impressed.
I want to know what those conversations were like when he told her that information. Was it him volunteering the information? Was it asked for? Next part. The comment on this video says, drop his name. I guess because she did in the last story. Also, I would read comments, but she turned them all off. But there are quite a few saves and likes, but she turned off all the comments.
And that is when the intermittent reinforcement started. Some sessions he'd be warm and kind and wonderful and let me in on little parts of his life and like be vulnerable with me or pretend. Other sessions he would be cold and clinical and detached. And you know what that did? It made me work harder in our next sessions. It did. And it started the addiction that I had to him.
Okay, now let me, because could it just be that some day he was having a good day and some days he was having a bad day? It can't just be that. It has to be because of you specifically. Because in my mind, I'm like, yeah, sometimes if I'm going to work or if I'm seeing a friend, sometimes I'm super energetic and talkative. And sometimes if I'm just tired, I just don't have it in me. And even to the point where my friends will be like, oh, what's wrong? Are you okay? I'm just tired. But no, it's because of this push and pull thing that she has in her head to keep her addicted, apparently. And I mean, she does have the propensity she has an addictive personality. She says she was, 6 months sober when she was seeing him. She also has ADHD, and people with ADHD, we tend to like hyper focus on things or be like more susceptible to addictions and stuff like that from my understanding. Yeah. Individuals with ADHD are indeed more prone to addiction compared to the general population. So, I don't know, because on the one hand, yes, what she's saying could be a reason and could make sense, but in reality, does it? It's just a huge stretch. It's a huge stretch to say some days he would come in and be friendly and warm, and some days he would come in and be cold. Because what is going on between, the 15th of August and then the 15th of September in his life that doesn't include you? There could be so many different factors: his family, money, research, other clients, the weather that day, if he stepped in dog poop. There's so many other things outside of her. It's almost giving like you think the world revolves around you. Because you're thinking like, oh, well, he's doing this because da-da-da-da-da. It literally could be any other reason in the world. I'm not with her on this one.
100%. And he knew exactly what he was doing. This man gives lectures on trauma and attachment theory. He used his psychiatric training to manipulate me and get me hooked. And guess what? It worked. In January of 2024, I was hit by a car turning left as I was going through a green light. And it was the night before my next appointment with my psychiatrist. So I was like, okay, I'll still be able to go to my appointment on Zoom.
So there's text on screen that says, I was more worried about missing my psychiatry appointment than the car accident and my health. And that's his fault? How is that his fault?
Zoom, I'm okay. But I did make an appointment with an urgent care the next day just to get checked out. I had bruising on my abdomen and a perforated eardrum. And the provider at the urgent care said, I do not feel comfortable treating you. You need to seek emergency care now. You may be internally bleeding. But it was 11 o'clock in the morning and my appointment with my psychiatrist was at 2. So I decided that I was going to wait so I could see my psychiatrist and not have to reschedule because I was looking forward to my appointment with him so much.
Girl.
I look back at that time and I'm just like, oh my God, I put my own life under seeing him. I was fully addicted to him at this point. And you know what happened is that I showed up and I told him that I may be internally bleeding and he didn't stop the appointment. He didn't say,
of course not. He probably was like, you might be. He probably was like, this girl is dramatic. Because if you really think you might be internally bleeding, what sane person is gonna believe you if you sitting up there at the appointment? He probably thought you was lying. He probably literally was thinking in his head, okay, what other medication can I put her on? Because obviously the one that she on right now is not working. Come on now.
You need to take care of yourself. Go get emergency care now. He let me continue and just tell him about how much I loved him and how grateful I was for him. Because that was really what most of our appointments were, is me just like pouring myself out because he was so good at the intermittent reinforcement. Yeah, I got some warmth from him that appointment.
What? Wait, how much you loved him? Wait. Now I need to hear from the psychiatrist. Because the way that she's relaying this story, it's like, it sounds like one thing, but could be another thing, which is ironic because it's also the way that she experienced it. For her, it sounded like one thing, but it could have been another thing. So what do you mean by you told him how much you love him? Was it like, oh, I just love you as a doctor, like you've done so much for me, the meds are really working? Or was it like, I love you, I'm in love with you? Because if it was that and he kept going, that's crazy. Now I don't know what to believe. Because I can see a situation where, like, if I have a doctor that I like, when people have doctors that they just click with and they're with them on their journey for especially years at a time, especially when you have those like pediatricians who have treated a patient literally their whole life and they're like family friends at that point, and the family might say, oh yeah, we love Dr. So-and-so, like he's the best. Like, was it like that? Or was it like, I'm in love with, like the way she's phrasing it, we need more clarification here.
So that was January 2023. And I also told
she said that was January 2024 at the beginning of the video. Hold on, let me rewind it. Because now it's not adding up. I got a new
therapist. I think what get me hooked.
She did say that it was January 2024. So was that just a slip up, or is she lying? Child.
After I risked my life to see him, that's when he really started turning up the intimacy in our appointments. However, he was really smart. Professional lines like the back of his hand. So he would comment on my appearance, but not compliment my appearance. So I would come on screen and he would say, oh, you curled your hair. Or I would come on screen and he would say, oh, you're wearing glasses. And of course I felt seen and excited that he was noticing these things about me. I didn't realize at this time that he had feelings for me too. I thought I was holding them all by myself. So I was so excited when he noticed my glasses that I ran and showed him my other pair. And he said, I prefer turtle shell glasses. So even though I usually wear contacts, I'm wearing these turtle shell glasses in these videos because just in case he sees them ever, he'll see me in his favorite glasses. He did tell me he likes the turtle shell. Anyway, it was just inappropriate things like that. Little teeny things that he let me in. And all this time, my best friend is an emergency medicine physician. And she told me, she said, Kendra, one of these days, your psychiatrist, she would use his name, is going to say, I can't be your doctor anymore. I want to be with you. I want to be with you so bad. I can't be your doctor. I'll see you in 2 years.
So she had her friend feeding her delusions.
So my best friend, who's a doctor, she picks up on stuff like that. So even she knew that our relationship was crossing boundaries and getting weird, but that became my dream, was for my psychiatrist, I almost used his name, to do that. And I told
You already said his name 3 videos ago.
him about saying that, my best friend, who's the emergency medical doctor.
Now she done doxed her friend. She doxing everybody left and right. Now she done doxed her friend. How hard? It's easy to look up the friend's name, emergency medical doctor, and
told him that she would tell me that, and he just would be silent. He didn't disagree, but he didn't agree, and that was weaponized neutrality. Was his favorite game to play, right? He didn't disagree with Brianna telling me that my psychiatrist had feelings for me, but he also didn't say that's inappropriate. Let's change the subject.
I'm with her right there. Because if I'm the doctor and my patient is like, yeah, bro, my best friend said, one of these days, me and you, we gonna get together. Like, you just can't do it right now because you're my doctor. At that point, it's over. So I'm with her right there. If he didn't end the relationship with the patient at that point, I'm definitely with her right there. Because that right there, like, there's nothing left. But, well, I guess it's a slippery slope. And we're also not, I'm not the expert and I didn't go to school for 12 plus years. So I could also see a situation in where it might be a risk to the patient for the doctor to completely cut off access cold turkey like that. It might trigger her addiction problems that she already has said that she has. So perhaps that is why he just stayed silent and didn't say anything at all, because he didn't want to give her the wrong idea, but at the same time, he didn't want to trigger a specific response or something. So I take back what I said. Maybe there was a reason that he just didn't say anything at all from a medical doctor standpoint.
It was also around this time that I asked my psychiatrist if he had diagnosed me with anything other than ADHD when I had my initial diagnosis. He said, yeah, I did. I said, oh, what did you diagnose me with? And he said, well, you had a lot of traumatic things happen to you in childhood because of your dad, and so I diagnosed you with other trauma and stressor related disorder. And that was the first little ping that I got of that was weird. Why would he keep that from me? I asked why wouldn't he tell me that? That seems important. He didn't tell me because he was using that information to manipulate me. He knew I had trauma and stressor disorder, and instead of helping me heal from it and telling me about it, he used it against me. After I risked my life.
Okay, I don't think I have any comment. I'm just trying to think of why a doctor would not tell a patient what their new diagnosis is. Maybe because for him it didn't change the medication course or anything like that. Maybe he forgot. Maybe he was trying to use it to manipulate her. But at the same time, if he was trying to use it to manipulate her, then why would he tell her? I don't know. I don't know what to think about that. But it seems like for her, every little thing that he does means something. And the world is not always like that. Sometimes things don't mean anything.
January 2023, at this point, I was full-blown obsessed with my psychiatrist, and my therapist wasn't helping me. My psychiatrist wasn't helping me. He was feeding it. And then I got a boyfriend. And at first, my psychiatrist wasn't really that keen, but then my psychiatrist realized that my boyfriend was a lot like my psychiatrist. And then I started talking to my psychiatrist about my sex life, about tracking my cycle, using the fertility awareness method. And my psychiatrist loved it. He didn't never say, this isn't inappropriate to your care. Let's pivot. Oh, he just let me talk and talk and talk about my sex life. And
wait, no. Are you talking about your life or are you talking about your fertility life? I mean, there's a difference. Because again, I feel like everything can be explained. Let me explain. If she is on certain medications and she is trying to get pregnant, I feel like that would be good information for him to know. Now, it seems like maybe she's the type of person that just likes to overtalk and probably provide more information than necessary. It would be kind of rude for him to be like, I don't need to know all that. So maybe he just sits there and listens. But are you talking about details, or are you just talking about, oh, I'm trying to get pregnant? Like, you can't just say I talked about my life. Hold on, let's play it.
I didn't get too deep.
Okay, see?
But about a year and a half in, and I would send my psychiatrist these emails just about how much I liked him and how I was so grateful for him, and put in a bunch of heart emojis. And this is really when he should have transferred my care, but...
Is it though? I'm just like, because, okay, yes, you can like your doctor. You should. You can say, oh, yeah, I just, thank you so much. You've helped me so much. Yeah, that's pretty normal. That's pretty par for the course. So it would be different if she was like, bruh, I think you're so attractive. Like, let's stop this therapy right now. Let's get it on, But from what it sounds like, she it was kind of like patient, doctor. Now she making me feel like I need to see a psychiatrist. Is there something I'm missing here?
He waited. He liked what I gave him too much. And so even though my boyfriend did not meet my needs, my psychiatrist and my therapist both were like, you have to stay with him. There's nothing wrong with him not meeting your needs. I'm like, okay. And my psychiatrist was like, he's perfect. Don't get wrong with him. And what was perfect about him was he wasn't meeting my needs. So I was still coming to my psychiatrist looking for emotional validation, which he would drip to me.
And see, the way I see it, the psychiatrist was probably like, he's perfect. Finally, somebody to take her off of me. If he really did start to realize, like, okay, maybe she's a little bit too, entangled with me, he probably was like, yes, please stay with the boyfriend. Please fall in love with him, not me.
Slowly. So my therapist, who I didn't know at this time had bad boundaries, but she did. I went to her because my boyfriend and I, after more than a year together, we started having issues in the bedroom. And so I went to my therapist and she asked me, what does your psychiatrist think about this? And I said, I don't know. I haven't talked to my psychiatrist about this stuff because I have a crush on my psychiatrist and I don't want to tell him this intimate of stuff. And she said, well, you should tell him because I want a male's perspective. So at my next appointment with my psychiatrist, I told him, I said, today we're going to talk about my intimate life. And he said, oh, I said, yes. My psychologist, my therapist, asked what your opinion on it was. And I told her that I don't talk to you about this intimate stuff because I have a crush on you. And he looked down and smiled so big in that moment. He smiled so big and I loved it. It's so gross thinking about it. And then I proceeded to give him 30 minutes of non-stop content about my intimate life with my boyfriend. And I actually recorded the whole thing because I was so excited about it. But now it makes me sick. I can't even listen to the recording. I've tried to start, but it's gross. Any ethical psychiatrist would have stopped me and said, Kendra, let's talk about your meds. Let's talk about your care. At this point, my meds were stable.
See.
And I was still seeing him every month. Yeah, that was a...
Nah, I'm on her side. I'm on her side right here because that's a red flag. Now, the other stuff was kind of like, it could be seen as this, it could be seen as that. One, if her meds are stable, I mean, you still do have to have the check-in every month. You can't, skip. But he should have stopped it right there. There really was no reason, especially after she said, oh, my other therapist said I should talk to you about this because I got a crush, or because you're a male, but I told her no because I have a crush on you. He should have stopped it right there. He should have been like, hey, look, I just want to keep it professional. Maybe you could find another male in your life that you could talk about this with. And then she goes into detail. That ain't got nothing to do with her medication, sir. You don't need to know those details. Okay, so I'm with her. I'm with her right here. That was a red flag.
That was a rough time. And it was pretty much his Christmas morning, the almost 2.5 years of grooming me to get me to talk about sexual things with him worked, and he got 30 minutes of nonstop content to use. So at this point in the story, there are two main players. My psychiatrist, who's my age, who crossed major ethical boundaries, and my therapist, who is a 75-year-old woman with a PhD. Neither of these people, at this point in the story, I knew were crossing boundaries. I thought that everything was hunky-dory and that I was just in love with my psychiatrist and it was totally normal. Little did I know he was manufacturing everything so I could fall in love with him, because it was on him to set the professional boundary and not let attention build.
I wouldn't go so far as to say he was manufacturing this situation. I think maybe he took advantage of the situation, but then again, I don't know. I wasn't there. I wasn't privy to their conversations. I don't know. But just based off of what I've heard, I wouldn't say that he manufactured it. Shoot, maybe he did.
So days after my psychiatrist's Christmas morning appointment, from a few videos back, where he got a crush confession from me, and then 30 minutes of non-stop intimate content that he did not stop me, my boyfriend and I broke up days later. So then I started dating this other guy. And this other guy, this new guy, was a therapist. Our second date was a hike. And on this hike, this therapist starts telling me about how he has a crush on one of his clients. And I thought to myself, okay, this is strange, but go ahead. We're on a date, dude. Why are you telling me about a crush on one of your clients? But go off, King. So then he was saying, yeah, she's so attractive. And I think she likes me too. I go and visit her at work. And
wait a minute,
her coworkers say, oh, so-and-so talks about you all the time. And I was like, okay, where does she work? And he said, well, I shouldn't tell you that because I really shouldn't be visiting her anyway. I was like, okay, no problem. So then he continues and he said, yeah, she wears these red lacy panties and short skirts. And I know she wears them for me. And alarm bells were going off in my head. Mind you, I had no idea that my psychiatrist had similar feelings towards me at this point. But I just thought, wow, this man is borderline predatory. And he said, yeah, and she just is so attractive that I have to smash her mate before every session because I just have to get that energy out of me. Okay. And yeah, he just felt compelled to tell me, and I did not understand why. Now I do. Then at my next appointment with my psychiatrist, keep in mind, it had been 6 weeks of nonstop fun for this man. He got to use my crush confession and 30 minutes of content, for whatever he wanted to use it for. And if my psychiatrist was good at anything, it was being professional and acting professional and technically not crossing any lines. And he thought that he was so good at it because he was, but that doesn't mean he wasn't doing it. And so I told him, I said, yeah, when I broke up, he had met this other guy, my psychiatrist. I had mentioned him.
She said his name.
And I told him that this new guy and I went on a date, went on a hike. And
she docs everybody in this dang story. Her psychiatrist, the emergency doctor best friend, the person she was dating who was a therapist who was predatory with his clients. Come on, I'm gonna have to bleep everybody. I mean, millions of people hundreds of thousands of people have seen this already, but I'm gonna have to bleep their names out just so I'm not a part of the doxing.
I went to my psychiatrist and I told him this story about this man that I went on a date with who's a therapist is relieving himself before appointments.
That's
and
crazy.
Talking about his clients' panties.
That's
and
crazy.
Doing all of these other extremely inappropriate things like visiting her at work. And this man, my psychiatrist, looked like he had seen a ghost and like he was gonna vomit because he prided himself on being an extremely professional and buttoned up person. But here I was holding a mirror to him with exactly what he was doing, but a bumbling idiot telling me how he was doing it without the fancy degree, without any of that.
I don't know what to think. I don't know what to think. I will say it's quite ironic that she started dating a guy with a very similar situation as to what she thinks that the psychiatrist has with her. But this is I don't know. I don't know what to think. I don't know. The more she talked, the more I'm like, well, maybe it was maybe she shoot. Because so I have ADHD. So I feel like people who have ADHD, we're really good at pattern recognition. And I also feel like we're really good at, because we're good at pattern recognition, we're good at reading people very easily and being able to like pick up on things that people do very, very easily. So the more that she talks, the more that she explains, the more I'm like, maybe she got something going here. Maybe she, shoot. If you still here, shout out to you. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. We gonna push through because I need to see what happens.
So this is when the chemistry really started going off the charts with me and my psychiatrist, and I held it alone for months after I innocently told him about my date with the therapist. He really started letting me in more and showing more parts of himself and, you know, turning up the intimacy. And that was exciting to me, and it made me fall for him more. And I noticed that he was working in an office, and I asked him,
I need more details on what she means by turning up the intimacy. Like, exactly what did that look like? What does that mean? Was he telling her certain things? Was he doing certain things? It's just so vague. All right, y'all. I don't know. Like I said, I got ADHD and we only halfway through. I saw another post that basically had summarized this whole thing. So I think I'm just gonna watch that for the remainder of the video, because I'm not gonna be able to get through this just watching all these parts. Like, my attention span, I just can't. Now that I've actually watched like some of the actual ladies' videos, and I'm watching this like summary video, I feel like it's pretty accurate to how everything happened. So I'm gonna skip the parts that we already watched of the originals and then go to the part where she explains the rest.
At this point, Kendra was sending like a bunch of emails when they weren't in session with hearts and just telling him how much she appreciates and loves him, and like he would never really respond. In a session with him one day, and she saw that he was in his office, and after asking him if he works in his office or not, she basically asked permission to go into in-person meetings with him. And so she was super excited now that she was actually gonna like meet him in person. Initially, when she asked him, hey, do you work in the office? He said, no, I just come in here. And she had to actually call the front desk and find out that he does have in-person meetings.
So did he lie to her because he knew she was going to try to come up there? Because to me, it sounded like, oh, he didn't want to just say no. Maybe he was trying to protect himself by just saying like, oh, you know, sometimes I come up here, but I don't, you know?
Now she's talking to her 75-year-old therapist and telling her like, oh my God, I'm going to see him in person, da-da-da. And the therapist says, oh, the reason why he's never wanted to see you in person is because it's risky for him. He might be intimate with you. He might want to touch you, da-da-da. So then the therapist all of a sudden...
Not the other therapist not the other therapist egging it on. Oh, the reason he said that is because, girl, brother.
And starts texting Kendra during times that they're not actually meeting to ask her advice about ADHD stuff for her own clients. So now Kendra's hyped up. She gets a nice little dress. She puts her makeup on. She goes over there. She's kikiing with the front desk people. He walks out, and she said she ran to him and gave him like the biggest hug. And he kind of just like patted her on the back. And that to her read is like, oh my God, don't ever touch me. Never again did she try to like touch him. Kendra, in her own words, said that after that first meeting, she really started to spiral to the point that she was like, I just need answers. So she actually started to talk to ChatGPT. She immediately names him Henry and starts telling him about everything. She said Chat did a really good job of trying to co-regulate her emotions along with affirming her. After talking to ChatGPT and realizing, wow, I'm carrying all the emotional weight of this relationship, like I need to name it so that I can like, you know, throw some of it off of me. I don't know, this is her logic. She basically goes into her session in December with the psychiatrist, and she tells him like, yeah, you know, me and you, we have a really special patient-doctor relationship. And he immediately stops her and he goes, no, we have a professional patient-doctor dynamic, period. Like,
okay, well, finally, because up until now, she made it seem like, you know, he was kind of, even though there would be red flags, he just kind of either was ignoring it or just not saying anything or just not responding. I've been waiting for him to be like, look, no, this is a professional. Like, I've been waiting from some of the things that she said. So, shoot, maybe he saw her in person and it wasn't the same. I don't know. I don't know, because at one point I was on her side. I was like, some of the stuff he's doing, it does sound a bit off. But now he kind of flipped the script. So now I'm confused. Now I feel like Kendra.
Like, he immediately shut it down, and it made her even go like, oh, okay, it's not special. Like, that's another boundary. She said basically he would let her go all the way up until the ethical point of the boundary, and then he would boom slap a boundary down, and she would just have to back up from it. That's the cat and mouse game she felt. So now in Kendra's mind, she just wants to be with this therapist. Maybe after he's my doctor, we can be together. Like, she's just like, that's her dream, right? So she's talking to Henry about it. That's her ChatGPT, and he basically tells her like, it's normal for you to fall in love with your provider. Like, that's a normal thing. He even named it for her, and he said that's transference. And she was like, what's transference? And so they start to really dive deep into that topic. So then Kendra took that information. She went to her next meeting with a psychiatrist, and she said, hey, I have an AI bot, ChatGPT Henry, and he told me that, you know, it's normal for me to fall in love with my provider. Together we created a safe space for me to unpack things, and, you know, you give me attention, you affirm me. Like, these things are things that I would want in a partner, right? So it makes sense that I fell in love with you. He told me this is actually called transference. She said the minute she mentioned transference, he kind of perked up, and he was like, did he also tell you about countertransference? And she was like, what's that? No, he didn't. And he told her that's when the provider falls in love with the patient, when it's like a reversal of that. And he told her, I need you to be careful with your ADHD clients to make sure you don't countertransfer. And she was like, oh, yeah, no, that's great advice, honestly, because at the end of the day, I do sometimes have, you know, more than professional feelings for my clients, and I shouldn't. And so thank you for pointing that out to me. And he's like, yeah. And so at that moment, she was just...
But he didn't address the transference thing? Like, see, that's why I'm like, at some points I'll be on her side. At some points I'll be on the psychiatrist side. I think at the very least, there were some missteps along the way when it comes to the psychiatrist. There were some things he probably could have did earlier in the process, some things he probably could have implemented earlier in the process, some boundaries he could have reinforced more strictly. I really don't know what to believe. Okay.
It's like, oh, he's just watching out for my business just so he has in the past and helped me, you know, answer questions. She said that as far as her business, she also looked at him as like a mentor. So at the end of that session, she said that he looked at her and said, so what's going to happen if you end up getting a boyfriend named Henry? And she was like, that's a weird question, but I would just rename my chat, you know? And so she didn't think of it until she got home. And that's when she was like, that was actually a really highly inappropriate question. And then she really started thinking about the countertransference stuff. And she was like, wait a minute, he wasn't telling me that so that I can be careful with my clients. He was telling me that because that's what he's experiencing. He slipped up. He was never supposed to do that. She always mentioned how smart this man was, how good he was at keeping his boundaries, how he was never sloppy. He would never, you know, cross them because he knows, like, I shouldn't. So she's like, when I brought up transference and then he brought up countertransference, she's like, I've learned now that these healthcare providers, they're trained in how to deal with that and how to like unpack it, work it through with the patient. She's like, he didn't do any of that. He didn't even tell me about it in the first place. He just let me go on for 30 minutes, always praising him. So then she went to ChatGPT and she asked ChatGPT to give her examples of when and where her psychiatrist had experienced and done countertransference with her. And so ChatGPT, again, this is where it becomes a very dangerous tool. When you're in a certain state, whatever you feed it, it's going to output it back, right? So she fed that prompt and it told her, well, this, and that.
Yeah. The over-reliance. So I have said maybe in a past video here and there, like using ChatGPT can be a good tool in certain situations, like if you don't have immediate access to a therapist or something and you want to know something. I personally think reading books would probably be the best thing if you don't have just like an immediate access to a therapist. But as you can see, if you give it a certain prompt, it's going to give you a certain output. So it cannot always be relied upon. I have a friend who uses ChatGPT religiously, to the point where she was taking medical advice from ChatGPT. I said, girl, go to the doctor. She over here literally implementing medical practices that ChatGPT told her to do. At that point, you need to make an appointment because you really don't even, like, at that point, you need to go schedule a blood draw, you know, so you can actually know, versus all ChatGPT knows is what you tell it. When you tell a provider a specific thing, they can physically see you. They can ask specific questions, specific follow-up questions. They're trained to know certain things. And if you wanted to, maybe after you speak with your actual doctor, you could go back to ChatGPT and maybe learn more information or get more clarification on certain things. But using it as like your primary care provider, that's crazy. That's crazy. Like, we really over rely on ChatGPT these days. It's actually quite scary how many people rely on it. I actually worry about the inability to like think through things these days, because I've heard some people, and now I'm going on a tangent, but I've heard some people say like, oh, well, it was like this when the internet came out because you didn't have to go to libraries anymore. You could just, look things up on Google or whatever to find information. For me, it's not the same thing, because these days people are using ChatGPT to formulate their ideas for them. Like, they're not having to actually think through things, like think through how to put a sentence together, or how to say things, or what words to use, or grammar structure, or putting pen to paper, or anything like that. Like in 50 years time, when everybody in the nursing home with smooth brains because they didn't use their brains enough, we're gonna be looking confused like, what happened? It's just the over-reliance of chat freaking GPT. Recently, I've been trying to read like every day, because I don't want to turn into a smooth brain because I over-relied on chat GPT. All right, we got about 7 minutes left, so let's see what else happened.
She tells us a screenshot of like the ways that he, was doing countertransference. I think one of them was like him complimenting her and telling her like, good job on growing your business. He even had said at one point, like, if you weren't my client, I would refer clients to you to work with ADHD. And she would take those moments and basically be like, oh my God, he's so in love with me. So after all of that happened, the countertransference discussion and all of that, she decided that she doesn't need therapy anymore. Like, it served its purpose. During her last session with her therapist, she tells her like, yeah, this is our last session, and she said that therapist was like physically, emotionally like shocked. She was like, oh, okay. Well, usually I like to be made aware ahead of time that this is going to be our final session because I have a procedure. There's a way that I like to, ask questions, see what you've learned, and they go into it a little bit, but not a lot. At the end, Kendra's like, bye, see you. And she said that the therapist in a very shaky, emotional voice was like, have a good life or whatever. And then that night she gets an email from that therapist again, basically telling her like, hey, I really do have a procedure. I really do want to know like what you've learned, what you've gained, I want to be able to give you like a healthy closure. And so Kendra took this as like, oh my God, this therapist is begging me to come back. She said it gave her an emotional wave, right? So she decided, I'm seeing my psychiatrist tomorrow. I'm just going to ask him to help me draft an email. So she goes in, hand in her face, the minute that she goes into his office, and he's like, oh, that's how we're starting today. And mind you, when she got those bullet points from ChatGPT showing her ways that her psychiatrist was doing countertransference, she took that screenshot from ChatGPT and she sent it to the doctor. She's in the psychiatry session and he's like, so what's going on? And she's like, you never responded back to my email. Kendra felt like at this point, he very much so should have let her go and like transferred her care, but he just couldn't let go in her mind. Kendra said that after that, he increased the intensity and the intimacy in their session. She felt like because she told him, hey, like I'm having transference, I'm obviously like projecting my feelings on you, he's rewarding her like, good job. You took full accountability for your dynamic in this relationship. It is all on you. Now I'm going to breadcrumb you as much as you want, right? So at that point, she gears the conversation back to the email and she's like, hey, did you see what Henry said? And he's like, yeah, I'm still thinking about it. And then she's like, well, I'm going to read you what else he said. And she basically goes on and she's like, yeah, countertransference is very common. They're human at the end of the day. They go through human emotions. What's most important is that it's internalized. They never act on it and they keep it in check, which your psychiatrist is very good at. She said that she felt like her psychiatrist felt really good hearing that he excels at like suppressing his emotions. And that at that point, that's when he rewarded her with a funny metaphor, which is like, I guess, her favorite breadcrumb, which is intellectual stimulation. And he gave her a funny metaphor and then explained it. And she was just like, giggling. And she was like, oh my God, this is the best breadcrumb ever. He then helped her draft the email to the therapist, basically saying, if I come in for another session, it's going to be more for you than for me. I'm happy and complete with your therapy and the care that you've rendered. Then the psychiatrist said something like, I used to have a lot of respect for your therapist. And Kendra feels like he's saying that because she got sloppy. He's basically saying, I loved when your therapist was sending you over to me to give me juicy details about your sex life and directing you to me to tell me like things that I've always wanted you to tell me. But then she got sloppy and then she got messy and I lost all respect for her. That's what Kendra thinks he's saying by saying that statement. So then after that, Kendra goes into a whole text message thread between her and her ex-boyfriend where her ex-boyfriend's trying to get her back. And Kendra's telling him like, I have more self-respect for me. I don't want to talk to you, da-da-da. And the psychiatrist's response to that was, I bet he had to read that twice. Kendra felt like that was his way of saying good job instead of complimenting her. And so Kendra tells us, like, during a full moon, she had this dream about her actually hooking up with her psychiatrist. During that same session, she actually mentioned,
child, I don't know what to believe. When I tell you, I could see it. I could see how she would be confused. Because, you know, I feel like it gets to a point. It gets to a point where you can say, hey, maybe we should, you know, wean off this provider from this patient because, you know, obviously the patient is feeling a certain type of way. But you're the psychiatrist. So why is she talking to you so much about all of these things? I don't know, bro. I could see her. So 2 things can be true. I can see some of her story being true. I could see perhaps maybe this therapist was, for the most part, professional and then maybe turned non-professional over the course of time. It sounds like a messy situation. We only have a few more minutes left of her video summary, so let me play it.
She's like, looks him dead in the eyes and says, hey, I had a dream about us like hooking up in this very office right here. And she said he like turned white in the face. She said he looked visibly uncomfortable. And she's like, maybe he felt uncomfortable because I basically psychically downloaded his like fantasy and I'm like speaking it back to him.
Okay, now that's crazy. You psychically downloaded his fantasy and repeated it back to him. Now we're not dealing in reality. Come on, ma'am. He got white in the face because he felt uncomfortable because his patient said that she had a fantasy about y'all 2 having a 2-piece spicy in the office.
He's just uncomfortable. She told him that while the actual, act was happening, she was enjoying it. She was so happy they were finally together. But the minute that she left and went home, in her dream, she broke down and cried. She was so distraught because she was like, oh my God, I thought he loved his boundaries so much. Like, why would he break his boundaries? Like, I can't believe that. So then she woke up from the dream and she was like, oh, thank God. I'm so grateful. It's just a dream. And so she said, just like a little kid, the psychiatrist looked up at Kendra and said, so you do like my boundaries? And she was like, I love your boundaries. I hate them, but I love them. At the end of the session, he gets up and she said he met her at the door, which he never does. He stood there while she put her shoes on. Then she's like, are you going to get the door? He like scrambled and got the door. She thinks in her mind, in her replay of this, he's completely frazzled because of the conversation they just had, right? So then he walks her to the foyer and then he like watches her leave. And she's like, he's never done that before.
See, now so then it's like, wait, were you appalled at what she said? Were you embarrassed or were you just surprised? And then, you walk her out and walk her, into the foyer and you never did that before. I mean, I've had a few psychiatry appointments before. I don't think they ever walked me out did they walk me out to the foyer? I don't know. Watching me leave. And then she said he's never done that before. See, it's like certain things she says is kind of crazy, but then it's like, certain things she says, it makes sense.
See you next month. And she kiddingly was like, maybe. And she was like, you've never done that before. And that's when she said she realized they had actually gone 15 minutes over the session time. And she's like, this is the beginning of the special treatment, like longer session times, all these other things. And I'm assuming she's going to keep telling more of this story. I, however, did a little bit of digging in other aspects, but definitely if you want to finish off her story time, she's on part 21 now, I think. Feel free to go to her page. It's going to be linked in the caption as always. Now, the digging that I did was somebody came forward that was actually a client of Kendra's that purchased her ADHD coaching from her. So this girl was a friend of Kendra, reached out to her and said, hey girl, I know you've gone through sobriety. I wonder if you had any tips or tricks for me. And immediately Kendra's like, so happy for you. Here's my link, book an appointment. So the girl books an appointment and before the conversation's over, the girl pays Kendra $3,000 upfront for 3 months of ADHD coaching or sobriety coaching, whatever it may have been. And she said essentially in the beginning, it was helpful. It was nice to have somebody that had gone through this journey to like help her, give her tips and just genuinely having someone there to talk to. But then slowly but surely, all that Kendra was doing was typing in everything that this girl told her into ChatGPT to get responses, and then ultimately just telling this girl, use ChatGPT as a therapist.
Wow.
Which we all know is very, very dangerous and completely horrible for the environment. You guys have taught me. Now, the friend that came forward, she was telling her story, and she was about to get to the part where she was going to tell us, like, okay, the sessions were running out, but I was so grateful because at this point, it's just ChatGPT. And then she said things got really weird, right? So I'm trying to find the videos where she's like going on into it more, because this girl had already privated her page. I think within like 7 hours of posting her story time, the client of Kendra had already privated her page, right? So I'm like, damn. So I'm finding other like takes of it. The girl that I found that watched the client's video basically said that she went from being like, oh, I'm telling the story, to like coming back to tell her story and being visibly shaken and being like, yeah, I'm gonna tell the story, da-da-da-da. And then all of a sudden, all the stories were gone. So what this person thinks, and what I honestly, I can see that happening too, is that Kendra reached out to that client and told her, like, hey, you need to take it down. Maybe she went as far as to threaten her. I don't know. Either way, though, the girl's story time is gone. But she was telling us what it was like to be a client of Kendra's. Someone has found that Kendra went on a subreddit and was like, hey, I told my story on TikTok and people are coming after me and victim blaming me and da-da-da-da-da. But if you want to hear my story, like, here's my TikTok. So some people are also speculating that all of this is just to further her career as an ADHD coach, but a lot of mental health providers are actually really concerned that she is an ADHD coach, especially because coaching is an unregulated industry. They're a little worried. But either way, you guys tagged me in this. I wanted to make sure I got it out to you guys. I appreciate you guys as always. Bye.
That was a very comprehensive shoot. We could have watched that from the beginning.
Guys, I just found something on Kendra, the lady who fell in love with her psychiatrist. This story may very well be made up. I don't know. I'm just gonna put the info out there. Do with it what you will. This is a post from Kendra's Facebook page from July 14th, okay? Let's read a little bit of it. I'm gonna move out of the way if you wanna screen grab it and read the entire thing. It says, ever catch yourself building a whole relationship with someone after one good convo? Yeah, same. For ADHD brains, fantasy equals dopamine, especially when we're craving attention, but sometimes we confuse potential for proof. This used to send me spiraling, overanalyzing text, chasing crumbs of attention, and calling it love. It felt romantic, but it was actually self-abandonment. This is very interesting. It was accompanied by like a little video. Let's take a look at the screenshot of that, where it says, my ADHD brain loves to make up a fantasy about someone I just met, not because they earned it, but because putting them on a pedestal gives me a big dopamine hit. Now, guys, we have to remember that Kendra on Sunday, I believe, had like 2,000 or 3,000 followers on TikTok, okay? In a matter of 2 to 3 days, she has almost 40,000 now. I'm sure she's monetized and is making bank. I mean, look at the viewers. It's crazy. It's crazy. So I don't know if she made this entire thing up, but I'm just putting it out there. Do with the information what you will. It very well, she could just be making this entire thing up for clicks and views. I don't know. What do you guys think? Let's talk about it in the comments.
I think we're just gonna end it there, because I feel like just go on TikTok and type in her name. You literally can be on there all day getting through this story. I feel like we got through the main like nitty gritty part of what's going on, but if it is true, it's like if the story that she's saying is true from her perspective, is wild. I do think the therapist was not 100% innocent if whatever she's saying is true. If she just made it all up, she a darn good storyteller. I doubt that she did, just because it's very intricate and all the details and all the timelines and all the things. Like, it didn't sound made up, but who knows? Either way, it's a wild story. I'm hoping she's not messing with the psychiatrist no more. Like, it's a wild story. Well, in the video with a palate cleanser, I saw this video of this 3-year-old drinking some chocolate milk. And the text on screen says, my 3-year-old niece being milk drunk is the best thing you'll ever see.
I feel some
Oh, she's about to be rude. She's here. Cheers, fancy baby.
That is hilarious. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you got through this entire video, shout out to you. I will see you in the next video.